Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with author, teacher, and psychotherapist Dr. Don St. John. He has been immersed in the psychological, somatic, relational, and spiritual worlds for more than 50 years. He has a unique perspective on healing and human potential, having constructed a view that includes four essentials and interrelated components: the somatic, or the body, the psycho-emotional, the relational, and the spiritual. His personal journey, which includes enduring years of intense physical and verbal abuse in his Italian-American Catholic home, has led him to a fulfilling marriage of 38 years, trust in his own abilities and instincts, and a love for life. Dig this interview.
Hey, it's great to meet you, Don. Thanks for taking a minute out for the show. And I want to begin our conversation with surviving the pandemic. You know, we've come out of it, but it was quite a thing. How did you get through that 2-3 year period, and how did it change you?
Well, you know, initially it was quite scary, and I found myself, washing my hands after bringing in the mail, that kind of level of vigilance. But pretty quickly I adapted to it. I met my clients on the telephone. I didn't think that would ever work. It worked just fine. It didn't impact my wife nor myself in any seriously negative way. And, we are now in our 80s, and so being at home, not going out very much, suits us. So it wasn't all that bad. I mean, on the positive side, there are many more workshops and classes available on Zoom than ever before. So, that's one of the gifts of the pandemic. And there is also the factor of recognizing our vulnerability. Who would ever have thought? Again, I'm 80, and in my lifetime, we never had anything like it. So, it was a potent reminder that, wow, things happen, and we have no idea how long we're going to be here, who we might lose. We're vulnerable, and I think in terms of our health and well-being, recognizing that and owning that, and especially, Joe, in our intimate relationships, if we can bring the guards down enough to just bare our hearts and souls with each other, it's going to be a very different world, a very different life.
Very well said. So I'm curious, there's so many things that go into who you are, lots of, titles and a lot of roads that you've been down. But if I was to put you in front of a bunch of third graders at career day and one of the kids was curious and asked you, hey, what do you do for a living? How do you answer that child?
I'd say to that child, I'm a teacher of the body, mind, and I'm a counselor of the body, mind, and relationships. I'm attempting to use words that a third grader might understand. To an adult, I would say I'm a somatic relational psychotherapist and a continuum teacher. And that's a system of fluid movement and consciousness. So, but to a child, we got the body, we got the mind, we got relationships, and how they all come together. And, Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Okay. Unfortunately, in our culture, we've been very, very slow to recognize how fully integrated body, mind, spirit relationships are. You know, the mind is so good at separating, and then we separate and create institutions that, you know, support that separation. You know, I like to joke that on any given campus, the psychology department is on the other side of the campus from the physical therapy department, you know, and yeah, right. So yeah, that's what I've been about. I mean, almost 60 years now. When I first realized that, hey, I need help. I was 20 years old. You know, got a Dear John letter in the military, and yeah, it broke my heart, and I got sent to Bermuda, where a bottle of Imperial Scotch, that's like 40 ounces, was $2.80. So it was a setup, and you know, I started drinking, and by the time I was 21, I was having some pretty crazy experiences. I woke up one day, I need help. And I went to a psychiatrist who worked on Saturdays. And that began a now 60-year process of both, you know, studying it as a professional and going through it myself.
So when you were young, let's say in the third grade, what was your dream? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Let's see, third grade means I'm 8 years old, and I'm still wanting to replace Mickey Mantle in center field for the New York Yankees. But by the time I was in the fifth grade, I'd given that one up and decided what I really wanted to do was get in the ring, you know, with the likes of Sugar Ray Robinson and Rocky Graziano, and go for that middleweight, heavyweight championship. You know, I wanted to be a prize fighter. And, I loved it. I watched as many television bouts as I could. Whenever I could entice a friend to come out and box with me, I would. And by about 15, 16, it began to dawn on me that I lacked what it took. You know, I mean, I could have developed the physical strength. I didn't have it, but I could have possibly developed it, but I didn't have the fortitude, the perseverance, the stick-to-itiveness that would have been necessary, you know, to even earn a couple $100 fighting. So I didn't know what I wanted to do, and it wasn't until I started seeing that psychiatrist when I was in my last year in the Air Force that it flashed, you know, hey, I want to do this. And, you know, now I'm sitting with a PhD and 2 books and lots of years working with people and teaching people, and it's been quite a journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
It sounds like it's been quite a journey, and I would imagine you would have to have quite a bit of inspiration to have done all of this. Who's been a hero for you in your life?
Well, there have been lots of heroes in my life, and early on, I mean, as a child, before, you know, I began this journey, there were people like Mickey Mantle and Rocky Marciano and But as an adult, I've had many powerful and brilliant male teachers that made an enormous difference. Some you've never heard of. A good friend, Joseph Heller, was a mentor and a friend. Werner Erhard, I didn't know him personally. I met him, but wasn't a personal connection. But he started the S training, and it turned my life around when I was in my 30s. And, been people like that, Joe.
So let's say right now, today, you could meet one person alive on the planet that you find inspirational or interesting. Who would you love to meet and talk to?
Right now, today, let's see. I'm just going to say who comes to mind. I mean, be a lot of people. Matthew McConaughey is, the actor.
Absolutely. He's fascinating.
Yeah, he's fascinating. He's a phenomenal actor who has a lot of depth, and I'd love to sit down and have a conversation with him. God, I'd love to meet the Pope. I mean, he's also a fascinating character. I've been studying these days how, and this might offend some of your listeners, might not, but how the early Catholic Church really terribly distorted the teachings of Jesus that resulted in like 2,000 years of anti-feminine, anti-body, and anti-sexuality. And, the Pope has made some statements that have been progressive, and I just don't think he's gone far enough. I'd love to talk to him about that. Who else would I love to talk to? I don't know. I'm enjoying talking to you right now. You're popping these interesting questions.
Very cool. Yeah, that's fascinating about the Pope. That's so well said, how you said that, because I think there is a level of him that's trying to break free and be a little bit more eloquent about leveling the playing field. So, the one thing that's been kind of a hallmark of your life is that you've really looked out for people and tried to help people. And I'm curious on this journey, how did you simultaneously help people and keep enough gas in the tank to evolve and to grow your personal life? How did you balance that?
Well, when I look back on the disciplines, the psychotherapeutic disciplines and the somatic disciplines that I teach and use as a professional, I put myself in the position of client or student with every single one of them. For example, back in the early part of the century here, early 2000s, I studied a system of psychotherapy that was pretty new back then. And the person who was developing that system is from New York, and I was living in Seattle. Well, I flew across the country, more than a half a dozen times and scheduled, 3 or 4 sessions with her each of those times so that I could experience that work as a patient, as well as I was learning it as a professional, as a psychotherapist. And I teach Continuum, which is a system of fluid movement exploration. A very, very profound system. It's a practice. It's a lifetime practice. And I've been practicing it for almost 30 years, and about 10 years ago, I began teaching it. So I think that's the answer to your question, Joe. I never just stayed on the professional side of what I was learning.
So obviously there's got to be a level of being anonymous, but what has been one of your favorite client stories, one of your best success stories that you've been a part of?
Well, there are 3 or 4 of them that are competing to jump out my mouth here. But, one young woman, for example, who just couldn't affect a good relationship with a man, a partner relationship, and hated her profession. And over the course of 3 or 4 years, she became a psychotherapist and began a relationship that continues to this day. It's been several years now, and marriage is on the horizon, and that kind of story. Now there have been several like that where someone, for example, whose marriage is just locked up in a pattern of dissatisfaction, and the patterns begin to break free, and the person begins to emerge in the relationship and in a way that they never had. They never had the ability as a child to truly grow up in relation to their parents, and it gets transferred to a husband or to a wife, and it has that same sense of stuckness, and they start to break out of it, and they start to assert themselves. They start to open and express what's important to them, what they need, what they want. Those kinds of stories are just so heartwarming.
Yeah. So of all of these accomplishments and all of the overcoming and the evolution that you've gone through in your personal and professional life, what are you the proudest of?
Without question, my wife and I have been together going on 40 years. We'll begin our 40th year next month. And, neither one of us had a satisfying relationship that lasted, more than a short time. Actually, I had 3 marriages and 3 divorces, all in a 14-year period. And, this one is going on 40 years, and our connection continues to evolve and deepen, and our sexuality is still alive. And again, she's 81 next week, and I'm 3 months younger, so I'm totally grateful to have been able to have that, and having it, it's been something else. And my second would be that I can teach a system of fluid movement, because I was a pretty disembodied character, and connecting with my body to be able to teach continuum was no small feat. And this is an important point for your listeners, the two are related. When I was disembodied, I wasn't able to connect in a full and deep way with another human being. So, no matter how much we liked each other or were attracted to each other, it was going to get distorted. It was going to get contorted, fights and loneliness and all that, because I wasn't here. I wasn't home. I wasn't able to be sufficiently present, to meet the other person and be met by them. I was going to say in my book, I elaborate on, this connection between our body, our connection to our body, our presence in our body, and our intimate relationships. Because if you hadn't thought of that before, it might be a little bewildering, like, what's he talking about? What does connecting with your body have to do with having a good marriage? It has a lot to do with it. Hard to explain thoroughly in a short conversation like this. So it's one of the reasons I wrote the book. But, especially the heart. The heart's part of the body. And to have the heart available and connected to one's heart and being able to speak from the heart rather than to speak from the personas or the outer garments, if you will,
Yeah, for sure. Well said. So, Don, at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, clients, the readers of your book, everyone that knows you. But ultimately, you're in control of your life. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
You asked some original questions. I have spoken quite a bit in the last years, and I don't think anybody's asked me that question before, Joe. I like it.
Good. I'm glad.
That's an interesting answer. If you asked me 4 times in the course of a day, you probably would get 4 different answers, because we're not monochromatic. We're not a single color. We're multi-dimensional. They're aspects of ourselves. On one hand, I see myself as a teacher and healer, a therapist. On another hand, I see myself as an entertainer with the touch of a showboat. On the other hand, I see myself as, someone kind of going through life, trying to make it as graceful as possible, dealing with a whole lot of medical stuff that I had to, navigate. And, when you have a really hard beginning and terrible habits in the first third of your life, there are consequences. And I see myself struggling to, be pain-free and have enough energy to do what I want to do. I see myself as a spiritual student, looking for the truth, looking for, all right, in the West we have Jesus, and there aren't too many satisfying, for me, places to really understand what was he teaching? What's his message? How, and there's so much written. And that's another part of me, searching at those levels. I see myself as a disciple of life. So that's what I mean by multi-dimensional, different shades and nuances and like that.
Yeah, for sure. I love that answer. Don, if anyone wants to pick up the book, reach out to you, learn more about you, anything about your world, where's the best place to go?
Let's start with my website, www.pathofconnection.com. Like me to spell that, Joe, or are you going to put it out on a...
I'll put it out in the show notes for sure.
Yeah, that's the best way. You can get my book on Amazon. My book is titled Healing the Wounds of Childhood and Culture, An Adventure of a Lifetime.
It sounds like you've had quite an adventure of a lifetime. Don, thank you for opening the book up a little bit for us here, and it's been fascinating. And best of luck with everything.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, music, and more from around the globe. Our esteemed theme music was composed and produced by the great E.E. Pointer of Kansas City's River Cow Orchestra. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.